Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Kyle. Guilt Machine is a side project from the creative Arion. The Soul album was written during a very dark period in his life and is profoundly introspective and raw and emotionally poignant in a very stark contrast with Arion. All right, let's dive into this. We're going to be looking at the Twisted Coil song off this 12 minutes of probably progressive metal, right? Let's dive in, see what's going on with Guilt Machine. It's interesting how theatric it is so far.
Wenn man lang genug in den Spiegel schaut, blickt man in die Augen des Teufels.
It's interesting too, the percussion almost sounds like it's played with stick bundles. Something you don't hear too often. But there's also a digital rebound to them. Makes me think that they're not physical drum kit anyways.
Move closer to a memory, feel it slip away. Life shivers in the distance, whisper it away. Your sun is smiling on my ashes.
Violin off to the side adds an interesting component to it. I don't know how to describe it.
Drown the ocean, drain the sky, wash the color
Cello now.
from the sun. Still the thunder, derail
It's an interesting combination of acoustic and electronic sounds.
stars out one by one. We come undone,
Very moody with slight progressive rock elements to it that remind me a lot of Porcupine Tree.
Nasze życie ma znaczenie tylko wtedy, gdy kochamy. Nieważne kogo, nieważne co.
breathe deeply of your essence, stir the scars beneath. Sing sweet a song so deathless, you belong to me.
A little bit of uplift there, as if there's some positivity.
Life shivers in
But so much of this track is just heavy and brooding.
wish it all away.
I mean, even that right there, that chord will slip into both of those down steps.
Your sun is smiling
different ending to this chorus. I mean, okay. We still have the repetition. It's interesting too. While Porcupine Tree is definitely what I would say is a heavy influence on this, I also hear a lot of Pink Floyd. Very cool transition into this much heavier and darker sounds. And of course, the increased destruction of the guitar tones is paired with the heavy compression on the vocals. The split, but also the digitization on this voice. It also feels very electronic, if that makes sense. Like making music as if it sounds like it's being made within a digital world, like within a computer. It's interesting just how much they're getting out of this one guitar riff. Little variations on it have allowed it to exist through multiple segments. Yeah, nice ornamental stuff. I said ornamental, but it developed into a full-blown melody. Ooh, and you know, creative use of a more simple guitar riff and using it over a long period of time. Very Devin Townsend. Violin back from the beginning, but we can't get rid of this guitar part. Using delay there, have it bouncing around the listener.
Life shivers in the distance, whisper it away.
You know, what's interesting is this is definitely pulling back from the beginning of the song
Your sun is
as far as
smiling
chords are considered, but I think this melody
on this perfect day.
existed in both. Oh, actually, this is the opening section. Yeah, this is the opening, but with electric guitar. Very interesting how the accented beats of the instrumentation is opposite of the vocals. And then back to the riff of the metal section. Initial thoughts. It's long, but it's short. That didn't feel like 12 minutes, but there was certainly a portion of that track that felt like it dragged on. And I am talking about the metal parts. I feel like there was more diversity, more variability at the beginning, and maybe there's a good, maybe there's a good thematic reason for that. Maybe there is an artistic reason for part of this to feel like it's just dragging on the same thing every time through. I mean, I mentioned how often we heard that guitar riff in the back half of this song, but it was starting to lose me as a listener, that's for sure. Whether there's a good reason to do it or not, I was not casually enjoying myself at that point. And I think a lot of it boils down not necessarily to just that riff itself, but just the fact that there's not a lot of ornamental things going on. When we look back to the first half of this track, there are so many fresh sounds. There's passing of the batons. Yes, there is still, similar playing throughout many of these ideas, but they're passed to new instruments. There's new ornamental ideas. There's variations that accompany them, new parts of, counterpoint or something like that. There's always some additional component to change how we've heard it from the last time we explored this segment. But there's also, I think, very clearly that we have a sort of verse, chorus, post-chorus, no, probably verse, pre-chorus, chorus idea going on within the first half, and each of those have distinct musical ideas within them. Whereas once we hit the metal part, we have distinct production ideas that accompany one specific riff that dominates the entirety of the section. And I typically find small production changes to not be as dynamic as compositional changes. And that's just a personal bias there. I understand that part of me, that I would prefer musical changes over sonic ones. But aside from that, I feel like this track went on rather quickly. I think a lot of it's just that the first half went by in a blur for me. And then the final 2 minutes were really interesting because it was a smashing together of a lot of the things we had heard prior. And I'm always a huge fan of callbacks, recontextualization, and reinterpretation. So it was very cool to see that there at the end. There's also one really large aspect going on here, which is the instrumentation. We kick it off with synthesizers. There's an incredibly electronic sound going on at the beginning of this track, but paired against that is violin, a cello, the vocals, the wide vibrato, the power behind them. Even when the vocalist isn't belting, like we'll hear later on in the track, there's still really strong air support and strong presence. I shy away from using the word confidence here because I do feel that in the singing there is confidence. It is well supported, well projected, well delivered, but I don't feel a lot of confidence in, I don't know. It's not the way that it's sung, but it's the way that it's sung. There's something here that feels very weak and disempowered. It might just be the melody line against the harmony, creating this darker, brooding element. There's a bit of, I don't know, some sort of darkness, possibly self-pity, self-defeat, something along those lines that I'm picking up in the performance, but that the actual production of these notes are incredibly confident and powerful and projected and delivered. There is almost a contrast there that I don't know how to reconcile, except that I can say that it sounds well performed while also creating this meek, brooding, melancholic delivery. And I don't know how a vocalist does that, but this guy does. It's very impressive, and I don't know upon which parameters of the production help create that feeling. So we have these acoustic parts, though, the strings and the vocals against the electronic everything else, including, I think, the percussion. There's just something very digital about the drums that we hear at the beginning. But they are a bit rounded off. They're not very sharp at all. I had mentioned that it sounded like they were playing with a bundle of sticks, which is just that. Instead of one drumstick, it's a bunch of sticks held together with some sort of elastic or rubber band. And it creates a very soft sound. There's a lot of give to it that I think softens the attack a little bit, but in the end, it's just a softer sound without going for something like, fuzzy mallets or something that's going to absorb a lot of the impact of the strike. But there's this reboundiness too that makes it feel rounded, but also gives it a very distinctly electronic sound. I can't think of any acoustic percussion that sounds particularly like that. Though, as always, I don't know every single instrument out there. I'm sure there's one. And honestly, if there is, it's pretty cool. I might have to track one down because I love that sound. But I don't necessarily need percussion instruments to play digital instruments. I can just use the keyboard that's in front of me. So yeah, we have this contrast though, and we don't see too much of this towards the end of the track. In the second half of this song, it's purely all metal. We got distorted guitars, we have destruction of the vocal timbre, in that we have compression put on it, we have filters that are put on it as well in order to create something that feels more digitized. There's all sorts of ways that the song goes about modulating and destroying the original tone of the vocals to accompany the destruction that overdrive and distortion and compression are done to guitar tones in order to create that cool metal sound. And so there is this massive focus on, I guess, sort of a midpoint to acoustic versus digital, and that's electric. Not electronic, but electric guitars and electric modulation of the digitized voice. Once it has been sung and put into an audio workstation, we have digitized the sound itself, and now we can modify it electronically. Electrically? I don't know. I think the lines blur a little bit there if it's electronic or electrical. Regardless, it's still something that was produced originally with an acoustic instrument, actual playing this instrument, just like you actually play the guitar, but the sound is modified and changed as it goes through the electronic process. So I think that's very cool. It also gives us a strong alternating of moving from something that is heavier, brooding, and more melancholic into something more aggressive and antagonistic, larger than life, in less of a moody way and more of a physical way. So we have these contrasts that exist all over this track. I don't know how to read into that beyond just that this pattern is here. Maybe the lyrics will explain why one section feels one way and another feels another, or why we have this balancing of two things in the first half and then sort of the midpoint of them in the second half. But it is something I picked up on and something I'm going to be looking forward to finding in the lyrics to help kind of tie together why these choices might have been made. Yeah, we got to talk about the vocalist, dude. I already talked a little bit about the projection and the support and all that, but this vocalist kills it every single place in here. And the thing is you know, the general way of singing, having good support, having good projection, he's just a great singer to begin with. The vibrato in here, especially towards the end of the track, as he's belting out these notes and getting this really wide vibrato on it, sounds phenomenal. The shaping of the tone, the control of the pitch, all of it. This guy is a solid vocalist. But there's also what I would call the performative or the acting part of this as well. This feels right. Every moment of this track that the vocals appear in feel like there's a connection between the vocalist and the lyrical content. There have certainly been songs that we've checked out in the past where I have mentioned something along the lines of, you know, the music's really good, but I just don't connect with the way the vocals are delivering them. Maybe it's an incredibly sad song, and maybe, you know, musically it's heavy and sorrowful, but the vocals just don't feel like they're sad. They're just singing, they're just telling a story through song form, and this is the atmosphere. And so lyrically, it matches the themes, but the performance doesn't. This isn't a bad thing inherently, though I do typically like to hear full cohesion. And if I can feel like the vocalist is in the same pain, rage, joy, grief, whatever, as the music indicates, as the lyrics indicate, I'm really going to enjoy this. And this is the type of stuff that's going to impact me and stick with me. I feel that here. I can feel the melancholy. I can feel the weight of the opening of this track bearing down on this person and them just feeling lower because of it. I can feel them in the quieter moments as we pass from one section to another. We kind of lose some of the instrumentation for something a bit more ambient, and I can feel that in the vocalist as well, kind of at this low point of feeling lost. There's just not a lot of projection to the vocals. Maybe he goes for a little bit of an airier sound for a moment. And then when we get to the larger sections, and when we get to the part where we used the clipping and compression in order to create that really small sound that feels like the vocals are coming out of, you know, an old speaker or something like that, I can feel the power and force that was put into the original recording before it was modified. I can feel this extra energy to it, as if the compression itself isn't something added later, but an element of being too loud for the microphone during the recording process. It feels like there's an element of destruction to it already. The belting at the end of the track as the song reaches its head, and and the vocals feel like they're reaching their peak as well, being pushed to their limits. There is a phenomenal storytelling and performance to the vocals on this. And I needed to talk about that just for a moment to give praise where it's due. I do like the ornamental stuff in the back half. I talked about already the vocal riff, the guitar riff that just dominates the entire last 6 minutes of this track. it is what it is. It happens. But there are these cool ornamental ideas. We do have violin at points. We have vocals being split out at points. We have them unified. We have the guitar riff over here that does ornamental stuff. And at one point even turned an ornamental idea into a longer, like 4-bar melody to help transition between sections. There are, albeit fewer than the first half, but still present, these little ornamental ideas that help this section feel a bit more alive, of pushing towards a finale rather than being stagnant and lost in this cycle. I like this contrast, that we have this locked in universal concept, the guitar riff, that is heavily pedal tone focused. And it's very groovy, it's very driven. I mean, when this riff was first introduced with like this rising volume thing, I was already starting to groove, then the drums and the bass come in, and I was sold. It's a solid riff right there. It's the repetition of it that ends up reducing its power, but it also creates sort of just this background element, this home section, this center that you can't leave no matter how far you think you've gotten away from it, how distant it might sound at any given time. You begin to hear new sounds, new ornamental ideas. You're always snapped back to that riff. This is very cool. This almost battle between the song wanting to move on and never being able to, almost as if the further it gets from it, the harder it comes back to that core riff, the stronger that instrument becomes. Because I mentioned that, the riff itself doesn't change, but the guitar tone does. Sometimes it becomes thin, sometimes it becomes muted, sometimes it almost becomes digital. It almost sounds like a synth at sometimes take over for it. And I think as we get further and further from that core metal tone, the harder it feels that we return to that metal tone. And that's just contrast working the way it's intended. If you really want this sound to feel this way, go the opposite way. So when you return to it, it's going to feel that gap between them is going to embellish that sound. That's no different than what we're seeing here. And it creates this feeling of almost futile resistance, trying to get somewhere. And the more you do, the more it fights you to stay where you are. It is a cool section, even if I found the riff to end up being a bit too much for me, too indulgent. But the section itself does end up being very cool. And there's a lot of, again, sonic production stuff going on here that does try to keep it fresh. The last thing I want to bring up for lyrics is the end of this track, which was phenomenal. And the thing was, we brought the guitars. Still, the metal guitars, it's the first new riff we've heard in these metal guitars in a while. The vocals are belting in a way we haven't heard them before. And something in the chord progression told me we're not where we were, or somewhere new. It's not just the riff that has changed. The entire core and foundation of this is different. And I caught something in the vocals that reminded more of that Porcupine Tree stuff from the beginning of the track. It's like, oh, okay, we kind of returned back to where we were, but in a bit of a variation. But the more that I listened, and then we had the We've Come Undone part, and I was like, oh, snap, this is the same stanza, isn't it? Or at least the way that the stanza has ended. Maybe the lines are all different, but we're ending it the same way we've ended it 2-3 times prior. We haven't just gone back to something that feels like the beginning of this song. We are in the beginning of this song, transformed through the process of this middle section, bringing the metallic components of the recent 6-minute journey into the framework of the beginning of this track. And it just gets more and more intense as we add more layers. The vocals are more powerful, they're projecting more, they're rising in pitch, the vibrato is getting more epic. More and more lines from the beginning come back. We have the cello, the violin reprising their parts from the start of the track. There might even be some synthesizer stuff that gets snuck in under these massive guitar tones to bring back more concepts from the beginning. Just a phenomenal way to wrap all of this up, and I'm really curious how it all fits together. Because as far as just wrapping the track up by taking our B section and pairing it with the A section, that just works on a purely musical level, but it could also mean something. There's so many patterns I've picked up on this track, and as we've checked out Arion in the past, patterns typically lead to thematic ideas. This guy is just, he's big brain when it comes to composition, and there's always some larger scope at play than just, oh, it sounded cool to do it. So I really hope the lyrics can point me into one of these directions. Let's dive into them, see what this song's talking about. This song talks about someone who is both overcome by grief and regret, forming into an overbearing form of guilt. The opening stanza says, "Slide down into the silence and numb the day away. Move closer to a memory and feel it slip away. Your sun is smiling on my ashes on this perfect day. Shut down the guilt machine and wash your conscience clean of yesterday." So we have someone who regrets what they've done. They feel guilty about it, and some voice, it's in parentheses in the lyrics, and I believe there was a different production on this line in the song itself, but it says, "Shut down the guilt machine and wash your conscience clean of yesterday." Something was done and they are burdened by what they have done, and something tells them to just forget about it, stop feeling guilty about this, but they can't. Every bit of this song is about pain, suffering, and anguish of not being able to take back this moment, whatever that moment was. I don't think the song ever really dawns on that. It talks about the color draining from the sun, the sky completely being drained out, the ocean being drowned, the thunder being still, that everything comes undone, stars are burning out one by one. This person's life is becoming boring, still, stagnant. It says that it to breathe deeply of your essence stirs the scars beneath. Thinking about this person brings pain. We get to the metal section. It says, "Accusations run astray inside the guilt machine." So within themselves, there's a voice within that continuously tells them that they're wrong, they screwed up, they could have done this better, they could have done that better. All the accusations are put on them. It says that there's tension, a twisted coil within themselves that turns until nothing is left of them. There's words unspoken that feed the lie. Smile and say you're doing fine today. I think this is interesting because the words unspoken feed a lie, I think, could be two different things. Paired with the next line, just smile and say you're doing fine today, could be this person trying to keep their suffering and their dwindling mental health on the inside. And when someone says, "Hey, what's up?" they say, "Oh, nothing, just another day." But they are being torn apart by guilt on the inside. But it could also be that, as it says, the accusations run astray within them, that maybe they shouldn't even have guilt for this. There are some words unspoken and they may be reading into them, thinking that someone else feels a certain way about them. Maybe they're angry at our narrator or at our protagonist, and they really aren't. They're reading between the silence and coming to a negative conclusion that isn't. I don't know. The song doesn't really point either way because we never really get to see this inciting incident. The entire song is about this person twisting and contorting in their guilt. It says that we can disengage and justify to wash away the pain, to medicate and victimize, to purge ourselves pure again. Ways to try to get through this, not by confronting it, but by evading it. That's the entirety of the song. There are a few lines in here. There's actually a lot of lines repeated. Many of the stanzas have repeated phrases to them. And there is a lot of repeated stanzas in general. But of what I didn't cover is pretty much reinforcing just what we've already talked about, some sort of pain and internal anguish, and a feeling of guilt. So that's what this track is about. And I think that I don't see a lot of parallels between the patterns I picked up and this, but I do see a general brooding and angst in this. And I think that the more metallic section and the heavy weight of it, the loudness of it, it does create something that feels bearing down in a very different way that the gloominess of the opening of this does, where that weight is more of an atmospheric weight and this one is more of a palpable one. But as far as the heavy contrast, the instrumental focus, the acoustic versus electronic, and shifting to the metal side, I don't really see too much of what's going on in here. There is a bit of a thematic shift as we move into the metal sections. Lyrically, this seems to be a bit more aggressive in the description of our protagonist's pain, where the beginning of the track kind of nudges at some idea of pain and anguish, more of a sorrowful side than a self-pity. Pity's not the right word. Self-hatred might be what we see a bit more in the metallic side. But otherwise, most of this kind of fits under one umbrella theme and fully explores that in a couple of different ways. These are my thoughts on Guilt Machine's Twisted Coil. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that as well as anything else you'd like to add into the comments below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening. Yeah, whenever you choose to watch my videos.